Somebody told me that they came to this earth as an egg before the sun was formed. You know, casual conversation as a counselor. I was having this discussion with somebody at one of the community outreach programs that we're involved with, and I was asking them, like, how long you been in Central Florida? And, you know, they kind of start with, oh, I've been here a long time. I was like, oh, really? Like, you look like a pretty young guy to me. I was like, how long you been here? They're like, oh, I've been here a very long time. And then they laid on me that they've been here since before the sun was formed because they came from a foreign planet and were hatched from an egg in the deepest parts of the ocean. And they got to watch as the sun grew and then life came to this planet. And, you know, as a therapist, I've got my nice therapy face on. I'm like, I see. Well, that's very interesting. I was like, tell me more. And so I just got off a supervision call with my other therapists and counselors talking about some other situations where people will say some things. And the question was brought up is like, where do we draw the line between religion and personal beliefs and schizophrenia, between delusional belief systems? And I said, it all goes to how the person's being harmed. It all goes to harm, right? If somebody is believing something and it is harming their life and making them unable to perform their day-to-day functions, find fulfilling relationships, get to their job on time, we got to have a conversation. If they have this belief system that they are from another planet, they were gifted with superpowers from Thor, and that their job is to find out those like agents of Loki and kill them, well, that's going to be something we really need to address in therapy because we can't go around murdering our neighbors. But that's the distinction that we make. And I feel like a lot of therapists struggle with how to handle schizophrenia in session because they don't know what to look for. You see, schizophrenia is like a dream state. You know, when someone has these types of delusions and their brain is thinking differently, they are speaking in metaphors and symbols. And so I had a fantastic experience with a child that I was working with many, many years ago, back when I was going to schools and meeting with kids. And then sitting down with this kid, we're playing a couple games of Uno, you know, to kind of warm up the conversation, get into things. And the kid stops, cards in hand, and looks at me and says, there's somebody outside the door. And I was like, oh, is it like school resource officer? Or is it like one of the school counselors? Like, do I need to talk to them? And they're like, no. It's the person that follows me every day. So now I'm on the defensive. I'm like, okay, well, who's following you every day at school? Like, we need to address this. This is no good. And they're like, no, it's this person that follows me all the time. They're like a shadow. It's a demon, and they follow me all the time, and they observe what I do. So pause. I've got this huge moment. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to address this, right? Because this is something very deeply they believe, and it causes them a lot of distress. And so I'll tell you the same thing that I told my counselors and interns in supervision. I said, the details of the story don't matter. Look for the pattern. And so I said to that child, I said, well, you must be a very, very important person for someone to follow you all day. And I was like, do you feel good when they're around or bad when they're around? And the child said, well, it's kind of nice. You know, it's like they're keeping me company. And I was like, that's amazing. I'm so glad that they're there. They must really care about you to be with you every step of your day. I was like, what do you think it is that they would want to tell you? Do they speak? And they said, no. And I was like, well, I'm just glad that they're there with you and you know you're never alone. And so we go back to playing our cards and, you know, they stop again and they look up at me and they're like, I'm hearing the Chucky theme song. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I was like, I've never seen Chucky myself. And so I'm having this conversation with this kid. And I was like, when's the last time you seen Chucky? And they're like, oh, well, last time I watched Chucky was with my dad. Now, we didn't go into the fact that they were wildly too young to be watching such a really graphic and violent movie. I was like, oh, yeah. And how did you feel when the Chucky theme song was playing? They're like, well, I felt really good because I was with my dad. I was like, where's your dad now? He's like, he's not here anymore. He got arrested. He's in prison. I was like, oh. I was like, do you feel good right now playing Uno with me? He's like, yeah, I really do feel good. I was like, well, I'm glad that you can feel good and know that I'm here for you and that I'm speaking into your life and giving you wisdom and here to listen to your stories and just spend time with you because you're important. Your time is valuable and I'm glad that I get to spend these moments with you. And he smiled and looked at me and we went back to playing cards. And so again, you know, I think people get really paranoid and worried and afraid of schizophrenia. And it's one of my passion projects because a lot of times it comes out of some really intense and really miserable childhood trauma and complex PTSD. But if you know what to look for, if you study the art of storytelling and you look for the narrative behind the symbols, you'll always be able to connect with that person because they're human too, just like you are, and we all tell stories. Sometimes theirs just have different characters. Maybe this will help you the next time you meet somebody who doesn't think the same way that you do. See you next time.